On the bench today is the stupid PET Tricks cartridge. Last year my friend Jim built a joystick interface for his PET he called Stupid PET Tricks. He made a video about that on his YouTube channel. I'll post a link to that down below. Later he added a Wi-Fi module to it, and this year he decided to make enough of them to sell. The Stupid PET Tricks cartridge combines all of the most popular user port add-ons to the PET. There's single and dual joystick interfaces, CB2 sound output, and a Wi-Fi module, all in the same cartridge. I helped out with beta testing the kit a few months ago, but now he's selling the final version, so I thought I'd show it to you while I assemble and test it. This is the kit. Let's see what we have in the bags. Diodes, user port connector. These are 3.2 to 5 volt level converters. And this is the power tap board to tap 5 volts from the cassette port because the PET user port doesn't provide power. The power tap's only needed for the Wi-Fi module. The joystick interface and sound don't require power. The Wi-Fi module is optional. This is a ESP8266 with a firmware based on Bo Zimmerman's Xi modem. It works with PETterm 0.5 or later. Jim has also been patching a lot of old PET games to work with a joystick, so there are a lot more games now that support playing with the joystick. These are the build instructions. It's important to follow the instructions here because there are some parts, if you solder them in first, it'll make it very difficult to solder in other parts. I'm going to start with the power tap board. And the first thing I'm going to put in is a resistor. I like to use blue tack to hold the parts in place when I flip it over to solder. Next we're going to put on the edge connector. And I like to bend the connector leads in first so that the board stays perpendicular. See, the board's not quite perpendicular. There we go. That's a little better. Next, I'll put on the switch. It goes right there. And I'll use a little bit of blue tack to stick it down to the board. The switch allows you to turn on and off the power to the USB connector. Next is the USB connector. That snaps in, so we don't need to use any blue tack. Don't want to put it in the vise with this switch in the way there, so I'm going to put it in this way. Next up is the LED that tells you when the power is switched on. There's a round hole and a square one, and the short lead goes in the square hole, so that on the bottom the short lead is in the hole marked short. And that completes the power tap module. But there's a bunch of nasty flux here on the back side of this pretty white board, so I'm going to clean that up. There. Much better with the flux cleaned off. That's the power tap. Next up, we'll install the diodes and the resistor on the main board here. These diodes need a fairly tight bend since the space for them there is fairly small. Next, solder on the main card edge connector. And again, I like to bend the leads so that they meet in the middle. Only problem with that is it makes it a little hard to get it on the board, but I want to make sure that the connector is perpendicular to the board. looks square and perpendicular to me. What's next? Next we solder on these level shifter boards, and if you'll note, one side is LV or low voltage, the other side is HV or high voltage. That's a 3.3 or 5 volts. And on the PCB here we see ground in LV, ground in HV, LV on this side, HV on this side. So we got to make sure that the ground and LV, ground and HV line up with each other. We have to put these header pins on first. And the header pins have a long side and a short side. The short side goes on the module and the long side goes on the board. Blue tack will hold them in place. I want to make sure that they're straight and perpendicular with the board. And that they don't fall out. Flip it upside down. Tacked on 2 of the pins, remove the blue tack and check to make sure the pins are straight. Forgot to turn the microphone on for that last section, but here we are with the 2 level shifters. Ground in high voltage on this side towards the 5 volts of the computer. Ground in low voltage on this side towards the 3.3 volts of the Wi-Fi module. Inspect the solder joints carefully. Make sure you didn't miss any. And I'm going to go ahead and clean up the flux before I move on to the next part. Next on the build order is the Wi-Fi module. That goes in here with the USB port facing the side. And the main reason we put the level shifters in first is that once the Wi-Fi module's in and the joystick ports are in, it's a lot harder to get to these solder points. And the reason for putting the Wi-Fi module in at this point is to be able to test it so that in case there's anything wrong, it'll be a lot harder to remove once the other parts are in there. Now you might be tempted to try and socket this in case you ever want to take it out. But if you do socket it, it'll never fit properly inside the case. That's the Wi-Fi module installed. Now the instructions say to test the Wi-Fi module now before proceeding. And I do recommend doing that. But for this video I'm not going to. I'm going to go ahead and proceed, put it all together so we can move on to the testing after I cleared the bench. Next is the audio jack. The instructions say to clean the flux off the board now, but I've been doing that as I go, so the board's pretty clean. And all that's left now are the joystick connectors. I've got these 2 held down with blue tack, flush and straight, I hope. looks straight and flush to me. Case fits. So go ahead and solder them the rest of the way down. And that's the completed module and the power tap board. Put that in the case. There's the USB connector for the Wi-Fi module, audio jack, joystick ports. The kit includes a small USB cable to power the Wi-Fi modem. It's only needed if you're using the Wi-Fi modem. If you're just playing a game with the joystick, you don't need it. The modem can interfere with the joystick though, so if you have the cable connected, it's recommended you switch the modem off when you're not using it. The cartridge plugs into the user port. Make sure you don't plug it into the IEEE port. Power tap on the cassette port. Plug in the USB cable to power the modem. You can plug your data set into the pass-through, or the spacing here was designed so that the power tap for an SD to PET or SD to IEC will fit there. I'll plug some powered speakers into the headphone jack here on the side. And plug in a joystick or two. We'll start with the single joystick interface. There's a D64 disk image you can download for the Stupid Pet Tricks cartridge. Got that on my SD to PET. Load that up. First thing we'll load up is the Stupid Tester. And you get a picture of a single or dual joystick. I'm plugged into the single side, so we'll just look at that one for now. Press fire. We get a beep. And the directional indicator. That works. I switched the joystick over to the dual side, and I've connected up a second stick. So left, right, up, down, and pressing fire, because the fire button connects both the up and down at the same time. And we'll try the other joystick. Fire, up, down, left, right. Well, we've kind of already tested the sound output, but I'm going to load one of these music programs to test it anyway. Well, let's go ahead and test the Wi-Fi module now. I'll reach back behind the PET and turn on the power tap so the Wi-Fi module's on. ATI will show you the status. AT plus config to do the setup. I set the host name to PETtrick, just so I know what it is when I look on my router. And we'll configure the Wi-Fi. I'm going to connect it to my guest Wi-Fi network. The password is in clear text, so I'm going to block this out. I want to leave it as DHCP, and we'll enter to exit. We'll hit yes to save the settings, so they're saved in non-volatile memory. And it shows we're connected to my home guest Wi-Fi, the IP address. We can dial BBS. Some games seem to make you want to hold the joystick sideways. Seems like most of them want you to hold the joystick sideways. Canyon's getting narrower. Oops, crash. Let's see if PacMan runs under basic 4. This one's got the joystick right side up. So I made a mistake earlier when I was holding the joystick sideways. This says dual joysticks, obviously that's for the dual joystick interface, but these games also are for the left joystick on the dual joystick interface. I was plugged into the single joystick interface, which is why I had to hold the joystick sideways. These games under SI Plus are for the single joystick interface. Some of the games won't run under Basic 4.0, so I switched to my older chiclet keyboard, PET 2001, with 1.0 ROMs. Let's try Galaxy Invaders. Again. Oops. Definitely a lot better than trying to use the keyboard for this. Here's a little music program that plays a few songs. Well, I guess that's it for now. I'll post some links down in the description if you're interested in learning more about the Stupid PETtricks cartridge. Thanks for watching.